Hey everyone, welcome back to the Point Podcast. Everybody's doing well on this Wednesday. A lot to get into today. Another beautiful day outside. You got the playoffs moving along one day until we see the start of the NBA Finals. Baseball is in full effect. The Toronto Blue Jays are red hot, and we're getting to June. We're getting to that. You're getting deep in the season where teams are starting to feel the pressure, where you got to start playing good ball to make it mean something. Last night, betting angle, Colorado, money line. Didn't look like it was going to hit in the third period. That empty net goal gets a 2-goal cushion for Colorado. Money line took the over on the game, of course. Good read there. So good night for betting. Pick of the day was a winner here to the Point. And we're going to get into all the NHL action today. I believe Ben Murray is going to join me some point during this podcast, potentially an hour from now. So I'll talk to Benny, get his thoughts on everything that's going down so far this postseason. But I was going to start with hockey, and I've been starting with tennis a lot this week. But there's a story in the world of golf that I have to touch on. I find this story fascinating. I've been chomping at the bit to talk about it all day. So let's get to it. So if y'all are not aware, I'll inform you right now. The PGA Tour has been the dominant force in golf for forever. It has been unrivaled. There hasn't been many competitors. Football has the USFL. Football has, the CFL to some sorts, and they have their leagues that try to do what the NFL does to no avail. There's no real threat. The NBA, there's the big three. There's other little leagues that teams try to start to see what they can do. But again, there's not much. But golf has been something where you could look at and say, well, the PGA Tour is a good tour, but there's players that complain about it. Maybe you could do something like this and make a push to have something in the world of sports that's just a little different. And, well, the PGA Tour was moving along great. You have the Corn Ferry, you have the Champions. It's moving on great. But then we hear that Greg Norman is starting a Saudi Arabian-funded golf league, the LIV Golf League. And, Greg Norman, who was on the PGA Tour, who was almost a Masters champion before he just threw up over himself. There's a great documentary called Shark on ESPN, if you want to follow a little bit more on Greg Norman's career. He has been the mouthpiece for this. He said the PGA Tour is taking money from the people. They're not giving them a good life. It's a bad schedule, yada, yada, yada. The PGA Tour is terrible. Now, I'll get to my opinion on whether he's correct or not in just a minute. But this is happening. The PGA Tour and Monahan, the commissioner, has said, well, if you're going to go to the LIV Golf League, there's going to be consequences. You're going to face the wrath. You might not be able to play in major championships. You won't be able to play in big events. You won't be able to play in the Players, certain big events. And also, the PGA Tour is a PGA Tour. It's hard to convince people to go. It was hard to convince players to go to the KHL. Only Russian players, that elite talents, were going to Russia. Yes, there's been Americans. Yes, there's been Canadians to go play in the KHL. But believe me, if they could play in the NHL, they would be. So with this, we've heard the names like Kevin Na, Jason Kokrak, Louis Oosthuizen, Sergio Garcia have all been rumored to going to the LIV Golf League. And this hasn't, drawn much interest because, quite frankly, who cares about Kevin Na? Who cares about Sergio Garcia? Who cares about Jason Kokrak? I could go down the line. All these veteran golfers who miss most cuts on the PGA Tour, you're really going to wait around to go watch them tee it on a Thursday morning? Highly unlikely. So you're waiting to hear, are there going to be big name players going? We hear from Rory McIlroy. There's no way he's going. He's not leaving the PGA Tour. He likes playing against the best. Not happening. Rumors Bryson DeChambeau might be going to the LIV Golf Tour because they're offering them huge sums of money. He says, no, I'm staying here. I want to play against the best too. He puts that to bed. he definitely was in cahoots with them. But I think after seeing the backlash that Phil Mickelson took for being in bed with Greg Norman and the rest of these Saudis, he said, no bueno. So we go through this, all the big players say no, John Rahm denies it, Patrick Cantlay. And next week, a week from tomorrow, it is the inaugural event for the LIV Golf Tour in London, England. And next Thursday, for the PGA Tour, is the start of the RBC Canadian Open at St. George's in Ontario. We have not had a Canadian Open for 2+ years due to the pandemic, due to travel restrictions last summer. So it's finally back. Scotty Scheffler is playing, Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy. It's a good field. And normally, even when the fields are a little watered down in past years, a former number 1 golfer in the world, current number 13 golfer in the world, Dustin Johnson, is always making an appearance. And the reason Dustin Johnson is always at the RBC Canadian Open is because his title sponsor, his major sponsor, the one that makes him the most dough, is RBC. But then last night, in a little media dump at about 9:30, 10 o'clock, as I'm in the intermission of the hockey game, I'm reading through Twitter, reading stories, hearing people complain about the offside ruling on the Cale Makar go-ahead goal. And I look at the story Bob Weeks has tweeted out, and it says that Dustin Johnson is going to play on the LIV Golf Tour. And I say, what? Dustin Johnson, really? And then I say, well, it's the same week as the Canadian Open. I can't believe he's doing this. So Dustin Johnson is not just not going to the Canadian Open, but he's turning against RBC. I said, this is not going to go well. RBC is going to be pissed. Golf Canada released a statement this morning. They're not happy. So it's been a bad 24 hours when it comes to PR for Golf Canada, for everybody involved, including Dustin Johnson. So then as I'm about to go live today, I hear that RBC has dropped Dustin Johnson as their sponsor. They've been a partner for 17 years, I believe, maybe a little less, but a long time, almost 2 decades. And they are dropping him because he joined this tour that's getting bad publicity. If you're not aware what happens in Saudi Arabia when it comes to human rights issues, it's not good. People die. You see somebody one day, they're not there the next, and there's no reason for it. There's no autopsy. There's no, okay, we'll investigate this. It's just they're gone. So Dustin Johnson is going to play in the LIV Golf Tour, and then underneath it was said that he's been offered $125 million to play the LIV Golf circuit, and he can make up to $150 million in potential winnings. So, a lot to unpack here in this story. First off, the LIV Golf Tour offering Dustin Johnson $125 million. This is how I would respond if I'm the PGA Tour. Who cares? Who cares? Dustin Johnson does not move the needle. Dustin Johnson does not help promote the sport. Dustin Johnson is the only thing that Dustin Johnson brings is the fact that he's got a very attractive wife and that his father-in-law is Wayne Gretzky. Dustin Johnson has a cocky walk. He doesn't give a good interview. He is a 2-time major champion. Give him that credit. But it's almost like he's most known for reality shows and having a cocaine addiction multiple years ago. Nothing wrong with that. Just pointing out the facts here. And being arrested for that. Dustin Johnson is not Rory McIlroy. Dustin Johnson is not Colin Morikawa. He's not. Bryson DeChambeau would be a bigger deal leaving the PGA Tour than Dustin Johnson because people have an opinion about Bryson DeChambeau. People hate Bryson DeChambeau, and they will tune in to watch the events just to see him fail. You need these people in sports. You need the guys you love and you need the guys you hate. Rory McIlroy, I think, is universally a liked guy. How could you not? Jordan Spieth, is a guy that brings out the emotion from people. Oh, I hate Jordan Spieth. He freaks out at his caddy. But you get an emotion. You get somebody to say, you know what? I like him or I don't. Dustin Johnson is just blah. He's a tall, fairly good-looking white guy. But what else does he bring to the table? He doesn't win anymore on tour. His last 6 majors, he's missed the cut on 3 of them. He got married recently, great. But if on the PGA Tour, Dustin Johnson leaving, in my opinion, does not open up the floodgates for other big-name players to leave because they're in very different positions. Dustin Johnson is approaching 40. Dustin Johnson has never been about the PGA Tour. He's never been about promoting the sport, advancing the game. I'm not saying he's selfish, but he's just himself. His personality is very much blasé. It's very much, hit the ball, go to it, keep going, not worry about advancing the game. And that's fine. A lot of people are like that. Most NHL players are like that. That's why it hurts the sport. But also, I don't think Dustin Johnson's universally loved on tour. Rory McIlroy said in an interview, I understand why people are going to this tour because you can make a lot of money. I understand why. But he also said he's going to go play against a bunch of guys and beat them. If that makes him feel better, good for him. I mean, if Dustin Johnson, what would be the bigger thing if he goes and plays against Graham McDowell and Kevin Na and Kokrak and Louis Oosthuizen and he can't beat them? Maybe that tells you more about Dustin Johnson's game and how he feels. He's been banged up as well. Maybe he thinks his golf career is not going to be that much longer. He'll collect as much money as he can, play in this tour maybe 1-2 years, get a couple big checks. Hopefully they clear and you move on. Because RBC dropped Dustin Johnson. If he plays in multiple events here, the PGA Tour is not going to be clamoring to welcome him back. And another thing is the PGA Tour needs to send a message that, you know what? You can leave, but you're not welcome back, because just accepting a big name person back onto your brand is a sign of weakness. It's giving in. It's saying, okay, yeah, no, you can go do whatever you want, but when that happens, there's no consequences. It's letting your dog shit in the house. You don't scold the dog. You don't tell the dog it's wrong. It's shitting on your floor its entire life. You have a decade of shit on the floor. You let your kid, you don't set a curfew for your child early in life. They might be out all night. They might drink and drive. I could go through these different analogies, these different situations where it's best to set boundaries. It's best to set rules and regulations early and often. More important for the PGA Tour is how they handle him leaving, not overreacting to it. I don't think many people are going to want to leave the PGA Tour that holds significance. Not having Kevin Na at the Memorial Tournament, Jack's tournament this weekend, is not a big deal. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to miss Kevin Na. No offense, Kevin Na, but they won't. Go play in the Live Golf Tour. Do what you got to do there. But nobody is dying to see Kevin Na play golf. Nobody's dying to see Jason Kokrak, Louis Oosthuizen. It's just the way it is. Now, if there's guys in the Korn Ferry Tour that are in the Korn Ferry that want to make the PGA Tour, and you want to consider going to make some money and playing in the Live Golf Tour, it's something I consider, because it's a 41-man field. You get a better chance of winning. You're going to get a better pool of money at the end of the day. So this golf tour does have its advantages. You're making lots of money, but you're also, I think, and it's sports, but it's also, you're making a life decision. Morality has to come into it at some point, because, I've talked a lot about just, shootings and the racist issues going on in our world and things like that. Well, there's human rights issues that are coming from Saudi Arabia, and who are funding this league's the Saudi Arabian government. So, and they're the ones doing this stuff. So I also think you're taking blood money from this government, and that's your prerogative. If you can live with it, good for you. but I just think it should be mentioned in conversation because it is part of the story here. But if you're on the PGA Tour, who cares? Go play. We're not going to miss you. We still have the biggest names in our sport. Now, if Colin Morikawa was leaving, I'd be panicked. I'd be worried because he's one of the young stars of the game. Everybody likes Colin Morikawa. He's a fun golfer to watch. He's great. If Justin Thomas was leaving, John Rahm, yes, you have a reason to worry. You're like, okay, our biggest players here, our young talent is leaving for this other golf league. Well, Dustin Johnson's not competing with these guys very often. Like I said, he's approaching 40. He just got married. He's got all this different stuff. He just probably wants to make some money and then get out of golf in a couple of years. And you know what? All power to him. But the PGA Tour has to send a message that you're not just welcome back. You can't just go hang out with this girl, then you come home to your wife. You're not playing double duty. You're committed to one person. And I'm surprised he's doing this in a sense, because I think a few months ago he said he wasn't going to go, and now he's going. So it was a blatant lie. He didn't want to face the music right away. But my other big surprise from the press release, the first golf event, is that Phil Mickelson isn't playing. I thought we'd see Phil Mickelson playing next week. Now, there are going to be other events. I think there's 11 or 12 scheduled so far. The fields aren't out on all of them yet. But does Phil Mickelson go play in one of these events? Does he get back to the PGA Tour? There's so much uncertainty with him. We haven't heard him speak since, I think, October. It's been a really long time since Phil Mickelson has released a statement and addressed what's going on. But he's not playing. I haven't heard he's playing in the U.S. Open. He would need an invite to play in it or an exemption, because he has not won the U.S. Open. So there's that. And that's in 2 weeks. He's not playing this weekend at Memorial, Jack's tournament. He's not playing in the Live golf event next week. So that, there's the fill of it all. I'm intrigued there. Does he get back on tour? How does the PGA Tour respond to this? Like I said, I would not be just giving up my leverage. I would not just be allowing him to walk freely back onto campus, if you will. I'd be saying, you know what? No, we're not just going to let you rule the roost. It's not your show here. We are on this thing. We need to set boundaries. But for all these guys, you're making a decision. For Oosthuizen, who plays mostly on the European Tour, for Kevin Na, you made your mind up. Good for you. Live with it. But I think this Live Golf Tour is not going to be around for many years. I'm going to say that. And if the check's clear now, do it. Because I don't think it's going to be that popular. Because looking at the field, it's not going to be. Greg Norman has his beef with the PGA Tour for whatever reason. Do I think the PGA Tour is just all empowering and there's nothing wrong with it? No, of course not. There's problems with everything in life. But the PGA Tour, if you play well, you win. You make good money. Point blank. Now, do I think the PGA Tour should set up a system where you get a certain amount of money no matter what, and your tour car, like you're battling for your life on tour? Do I think they could set up different boundaries there? Absolutely. But you're also, the PGA Tour, you're playing day to day. In these other sports, you're given long-term contracts, and I'm sure these other sports would love the way the PGA Tour is modeled. You have to earn your spot to get your tour card. I don't like the bitching and complaining about somewhere where you're working and you're not offering solutions to the problems. It's when somebody watches the news and you're like, oh, this is a bad idea, and you don't offer anything in return. Well, what's the solution? You can bitch and complain about something, but unless you have an idea, unless you have a thought as to why it can be improved, then you're just complaining for the sake of complaining, and those are the worst kind of people. Like, I thought the Edmonton Oilers defense was terrible last night, and I'll get to it in a minute, and I'll tell you what they have to do to improve it. The PGA Tour, sure. PGA Tour, if they're truly worried about this, then maybe they should even do this once a year. Sit down with your top players. Sit down with some guys that are at the bottom end. Sit down with some guys that are playing for your tour card year to year, and talk to them about what they can do to improve the experience of being on the PGA Tour, the work experience, if you will. That's something I think you should do. All that should be done once a year at every job. If you're a boss, you can go, what can I do better? What can you as a staff do better to make this environment better, to make our product better, to make the work experience better? Yes, that should happen in every walk of life. You know, I think that's even as if you're in a family and you're with your siblings and you talk to each other, but I think our communication could be improved. Again, I'm not a fucking therapist here, but we're going through this. I'm offering solutions. That's something I think the PGA Tour should do, because you're seeing players leave, but maybe if there's a better solution, maybe if there's something that you can do, then you have that discussion. And like everything in life, you're not going to be able to fix every issue that somebody has. Somebody's going to be mad about something every day of the week, and you're not going to be able to do anything. But if you can fix 2 out of 4, 50% is better than 0. Sure, you'll still hear bitching and complaining, but fixing 50% of 100% of the problems is pretty good. And I think your employees will accept that and handle that better than doing nothing, than doing 0 out of 100. Then you're going to have more people be like, why am I here? Okay, yeah, I'll go take the blood money from the king that they killed last week. But, it's money. It's in my pocket. I get to take it home to my family. We get a better life. Most people think with their heart and think of the people around them more than thinking of morality and thinking of where did this money come from? 9 out of 10 people see a bag of cash on the street corner, and they don't ask, oh, where did this come from? Should I take this to the police station? You'll take the cash because it's cash and you could use it to buy stuff. Or, I guess I'm an adult. I should be like, yeah, you should save it and put it away. Which is what I do because I'm cheap as hell. But you get a bunch of bills. You can't really invest that. So you have to figure out a way around it. But you know what I'm saying here. But all in all, the PGA Tour is not perfect, but it's pretty damn good. There's a product every weekend. There's a tournament every weekend. Like I said, Jack's tournament starts tomorrow in Muirhead Village in Ohio. The Memorial. It's a good event. And then we have the Canadian Open. Then we have the U.S. Open. And I'm sure there's problems with everything on tour. But at the same time, sometimes you just got to suck it up. And sometimes you just got to accept the situation that you're in and hope for just slightly better things to happen. And that's how I look at this. I don't sympathize all that much with the guys that are leaving the PGA Tour because I really don't understand their beef. How Dustin Johnson could have a beef with the PGA Tour is beyond me. He sits out a lot of events. He's made a whole lot of money on the PGA Tour. Maybe these guys just need my help gambling because they're losing it all doing that. I don't know. Did his wedding cost that much that he needs to go to the Live Tour to make it up? Maybe. But anyway, I find this story fascinating. It'll be interesting to watch what happens next week, how the PGA Tour responds. But Dustin Johnson may not be on the PGA Tour anymore. He's a U.S. Open champion, so he's allowed to play at the U.S. Open. But after that, how does he respond? Does he play any events this summer? Or is he just a Live Tour golfer that shows up for majors? Wait to see. Now, let's get to hockey. So I wanted to start with that today, but that golf story is just so interesting. And last night was game 1 between the Oilers and Avalanche, game 1 of the Western Conference Final from Ball Arena in Colorado. And what a game it was. what a game it was. Ultimately an 8-6 finish for the Colorado Avalanche in a game where everything happened except good defensive play. Everything happened except for smart reads. Everything happened except for a goaltender making a save. It was eerily similar to the Calgary Flames Edmonton Oilers game 1, where the Calgary Flames won that game 9-6. But the Colorado Avalanche are better than the Calgary Flames. They've been more consistent throughout the season. And from jump, I didn't like the way the Oilers started the game last night, and here's why. They started the game and they played them the whole game together with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on the same line. And I can't for the life of me understand it. In the series against Calgary, McDavid did not play with Draisaitl the whole series. To me, it screams of desperation. It screams of we don't trust our lines to be compatible. We don't trust our lines to come up with big plays. We got to play our two best players together. When Evander Kane's been playing great with McDavid, when Zach Hyman's been playing great with Leon Draisaitl, Yamamoto's found some chemistry, and you're looking at it saying, why are you doing this? Because it hurts your team overall. And yes, Edmonton did score 6 goals last night, but I'll get to that in a minute. These two together are great, but the rest of your team struggles. It's not a good idea. I hated it from the second the game started. I didn't understand it. I don't want to see it in game 2, although I think Jay Woodcroft will continue to do it. Oilers defense. Oilers defense last night. You learn it about peewee or bantam when you're a defenseman. The term gap up, meaning to step up in the play, meaning not to skate backwards and can give the guys more room, give them more space. You push back closer to your goaltender. So a gap up on the play, don't fall back. But it was a clinic last night from the Edmonton Oilers defense on how not to gap up, on how not to be aggressive, on how not to. They gave the Avalanche free reign to do whatever they wanted last night. Nathan McKinnon, Rantanen, Kadri, it didn't matter if it was Nurse coming on the point, Ceci, Kulak, Bouchard, every defenseman on Edmonton was thinking, okay, we need to back ourselves up. No. What did I say? The key to winning this series is control of the neutral zone. And backing up means you're giving them extra space to get into your zone. Every time you should be at your own blue line at the very stop the speed. Stop Colorado. Stop Edmonton on the other side for Colorado's defense from gaining speed from the neutral zone. Don't allow them to come into the zone with speed because they are two teams that can take advantage of it. They are two teams that are ultra fast. They are not teams that just cycle it around and it's slow. That's not the way they play. So the Oilers defense last night, the whole game, I'm looking at this saying, how the hell is this your plan? How have you come into this game? This is how we're going to win? By not gapping up, by not being aggressive, by allowing Colorado free reign to do whatever the hell they want? It made no sense. And because of this, it led to Edmonton, getting behind early. For instance, they allowed Colorado to come and get chances off the rush, but then they're so out of position, they're so out of it mentally that Colorado just kept cycling the puck. They had 3 shifts in the first period where they had the Edmonton defense on the ice for at least a minute and a half. They just kept going. Cycle it around, get a shot, get the puck back. And the defense are gassed, the Oilers forwards are gassed, and ends up leading to a goal. McKinnon's scoring, Kuemper's second goal was because they were so fatigued. They get a shot from the point, Kuemper gets a body on it, it beats Mike Smith. Every shot did last night. But again, you're allowing your opponents to get momentum. You're allowing them to gain speed, which is their strength, like yours. And it was a mind-boggling thing for me where I'm looking, why are you doing it this way? You don't have to do it. You're making life more difficult on yourself. So that was another situation where I'm looking at it saying, why? Why is this the game plan? Why did you choose this route to try to beat this team? But that was the Compher goal. And McKinnon's second goal, same thing. Kadri's a power play. Compher gets another one. I'm just looking through the goals. They're all similar. Where they get momentum. The Oilers chased. We could talk about goaltending, but there's still a lot to get into. I thought Alex Newhook had a great game last night for the Colorado Avalanche. He got inserted into the lineup for Nicolas Aube-Kubel, and I thought Newhook played really well. He did get an assist late in the game, but he had great speed. He made a lot of things happen, and I watch him play, and that's exactly the reason why the Colorado Avalanche did not trade for Claude Giroux, because I think Philadelphia clearly wanted Alex Newhook in the deal, and I would rather have Alex Newhook for multiple years than Giroux for one postseason, because Colorado still might win the Stanley Cup with Newhook only playing part-time, and they'd have to lose him in the trade to get Giroux. So I thought Newhook and I thought he should have been playing from the beginning, but he played extremely well last night. But the crazy thing about the game is that first two periods, Edmonton really, I don't feel they had a pulse. They scored quick goals because Darcy Kuemper was terrible early in the game. Excluding the Evander Kane breakaway goal, which was his 13th of the playoffs, you can't blame him there. But the Hyman goal, I think you got to make a play on it. I just think he was out of position. You got to make a save there. Ryan McLeod, that's another one where he makes a save, but the puck's just sitting there. McLeod taps it home. So Darcy Kuemper was terrible, but also last night for the Colorado Avalanche, Josh Manson, who I really like, a deadline acquisition, and Jack Johnson were god-awful. Their reads, their positioning in their own zone was terrible. They on the first goal, you got Manson, who's like in no man's land, not knowing what to do with Yamamoto having the puck on the wall. And then you have Jack Johnson, who's like, well, what do I do? And then Evander Kane breaks free of them both. He goes in on a breakaway and scores. So that's a bad one. And then on the Hyman goal, Manson was supposed to have backside coverage on Zach Hyman. He didn't box him out in front of the net. Hyman was able to get a stick on it on a second effort and poke his ninth of the postseason behind Darcy Kuemper. So they were terrible last night. And I normally really like that Josh Manson. Maybe it's having Jack Johnson on your line. Is Jack Johnson, I don't like to be mean to the guy, but he's just a guy that is just a cancer. I mean, looking at Josh Manson, he only played 14 minutes last night. And I hate plus minus, but those two goals were his fault. Those two were clearly his fault. And I know that because you watch the game, you look at both goals. He finished the night -4. That doesn't matter to me. But those first two were 100% his fault, and he has to own that. So no, that's one thing. I don't think either defense was great last night. The only defenseman that played great was Cale Makar. Cale Makar, I'm starting to watch him, and this is not really Colorado Edmonton's how they're marketing the series. Is Nathan MacKinnon versus Connor McDavid, and in the Eastern Conference Final, I think you have a couple different ways you can market the series just when it comes to head-to-head players. But what I'm starting to take heed of, what I'm starting to really understand is potentially Cale Makar could be better than Nathan MacKinnon. And I truly believe that Cale Makar is so skilled, ultra fast. There's just nothing about his game that isn't spectacular. Defensively, he has his warts. He occasionally gets stripped of the puck, but his speed, his hockey sense is second to none. And I'm watching last night saying McKinnon's a great player. I found a lot of times in these playoffs, he has games where he doesn't have to be great and the team still wins. Game 6 against St. Louis. Last night, I thought McKinnon was okay, but 97 was clearly better than McKinnon last night. But JT Compher gets a goal. Nazem Kadri scores one on the power play. Landeskog gets the empty netter. Makar gets a goal. You go through it. He has a lot of help around him. But Cale Makar is taking that step where, and I truly believe this, he is going to be in the top 5 players discussion because he's that good. And it's a tough minutia because you look at, who's the best defenseman in the game. And you got Hedman and you got Fox and Makar. And Makar is so much different than Hedman. Hedman's just this cyborg where he's 6'5" and he moves like a gazelle and he does all these things. And Makar is complete opposite where he's just, a finesse guy where he's, very, very thin and ultra fast. But when does he pass Hedman? When does he become the best defenseman in the world? I truly think at the end of his career, we could be saying that Cale Makar was the better player than Nathan McKinnon. And not just before the end of their careers. I believe in the not too distant future, people will be saying, you know what, Cale Makar is the best player in the Colorado Avalanche, not Nathan McKinnon. Cale Makar is the straw that stirs the drink. He's the guy. He's the difference maker. He's the guy that we've been waiting for. We had Nathan McKinnon for a lot of years. We didn't win. We have Cale Makar in his prime. We will find a way to win. So that might be a longer term thing. That might be a spicy take. But the more I watch him, the more I just say this guy is unbelievable how good he is. Just his ability his skating ability. He's got an incredible shot. He's so smart in the power play. He just has it all. He gets shot through from the point. Him and Adam Fox are both elite at doing that. So we'll see where that goes. But I just thought Cale Makar was the best player on the ice last night for Colorado. I think it was McDavid on the other side. He played extremely well. He did all that he could last night to get the Oilers back in the game. But ultimately, it didn't work out. So now, 2 other big topics from this game. Goaltending, which we'll get to when it comes to Game 2 and beyond. And the play with 13 seconds left in the first period. So if you weren't watching the game last night, it was Zach Hyman scores late in the second period to tie the game at 2. Big goal for the Oilers, stops a lot of momentum. And you get a tie game going into the intermission. You're feeling pretty good. But just seconds later, Cale Makar steals the puck. Puck's about to pop out of his zone. He steals the puck. He's walking in undeterred. The defense are not gapping up. They're backing up because that's the way they approached it. Makar lets it rip. Bar down. Beautiful goal. 3-2 Colorado to end the second period. However, Jay Woodcroft goes to his trusty tablet because who doesn't need a goddamn tablet on the bench anymore? So we can look up different angles, so we can video review it and get everybody talking the day after, not talk about the actual game, but just talk about the review. So then we see that, Valery Nichushkin was actually in the offensive zone, and Cale Makar was coming into the zone, but he did not have the puck on his stick at the time that he was entering the zone, meaning he did not have control of the puck per se until Nichushkin had his blade on the blue line. So looking back, they look at it briefly. It wasn't that brief. It was pretty long. And they find out that, no, it is indeed a good goal. It was not offside. You have to have control to enter the zone. And automatically, Jay Woodcroft and Twitter went into a blaze because Colorado took a 3-2 lead, failed challenge by Jay Woodcroft, which led to a power play for Colorado, which Kadri scored on early into the second period. And Edmonton ultimately loses by 2 goals, but really won because the second was an empty netter. So this controversial goal could have, you could argue was the difference maker in these 2 teams in winning and losing last night. So, first of all, to me, this is really splitting hairs. He didn't have control of the puck. Well, it was touching his stick for a while, And then he gets over the line, he doesn't have it, but he was moving with the puck in the zone, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I'm thinking, well, it looked offside to me. But you know what my stance here is. I don't want to challenge. I have no interest in looking at a challenge. I don't want to look the angle 100 times. I feel like this must be something for fans where they just get so horny to see this video review because I don't know why we do it. But we look at it 80 times and we dissect it and we think about it. To me, it was probably offside. But the fact that there's a rule that we don't know about and there's the challenges and you challenge a play and you still get it wrong. To me, this is just, it's so stupid. Last night was a clear example at how challenges just don't work. Excuse me as I take a drink. Challenges just don't work. You need something that's concrete. You need something that makes sense. And the rule book, it just isn't consistent to me. That's an offside. However, they did not call it on the ice. So if the four idiots can't see it and they don't call it, I'm fine with it. I'm good with nothing happening because that's the way it is. It's the four guys. It's not four guys and 80,000 video cameras because otherwise just get them off the ice. But did I think it was an offside? I did. But I'm not going to complain until the cows come home about it not, because I guess that's the rule. Now, I'm not a fan of a team. I have no rooting interest. I could give a shit. But if it's called on the ice and it's an offside, great. What irks me about this is 99.9% of fans would not have an opinion, would not be upset, it would not be a problem on these type of offside plays if we didn't have video review, because nobody notices an offside when it happens. Nobody talks about the goalie interference. It's never a discussion. So that was a goal, let's move on. But then you review it and you're like, oh, no, that was offside. Oh, no, yeah, oh, it's clearly offside. You saw that one. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. But you say that in the moment to make yourself feel better and think you're an expert. I didn't see an offside last night. Real time. I didn't. I was watching Cale Makar. I could give a shit about Valerie Nikushkin. Now, if the zebra calls it offside, okay. Colorado fans boo for half a second because they didn't think it was, and you move on to the very next play. If we didn't have video review, we wouldn't be hearing today, oh, we have so many problems in the league. And I saw Sid Sixero on Twitter. Oh, the NHL knows they're wrong because they didn't release a press release. Okay, big man. We know you're rooting for the Canadian team. Good for you. Good to be unbiased in your job. But if we didn't have video review, there wouldn't be all this bitching. There wouldn't be, well, what happened? It's just stupid. I thought, looking at the video review, I thought it was offside. To me, that's an offside. But I don't care enough to bitch about it. In real time, did I think it was an offside? No. If those four guys blow the whistle or they don't, that's how we should view the play. Because video review is not helping in any sport. It doesn't help viewership. It doesn't help understanding. Because people are more confused today than they were yesterday on the rule of an offside. People are like, well, why isn't that an offside? Sure look like an offside to me. So if they need to implement a new rule book, if they need to attach a camera from the rafters that just tracks it and it sends a message that it is an offside to the refs, I don't know. But I can deal with the human element. I can deal with humans making mistakes because every human makes a mistake. I make mistakes at this job. I make mistakes at my other job. You make mistakes at yours. We don't get crucified for it. You're going to miss an offside. You're going to miss certain things, and you just deal with it. Simple as that. The computers aren't helping. They're making it more complicated. Last night was a chaotic, entertaining, rampant game between Colorado and Edmonton, but it's marred. It's got a line under it because of this play. Mostly I say, well, all these talking points are good. They're good content. This isn't, because today's conversation, today's thought is not about the game itself last night. It's about whether the NHL has problems with their rule book. Who cares about the rule book? No, like, that shouldn't be what we want to talk about, is the rule book in the NHL. That's not the most important thing. That's not interest level. That doesn't put asses in seats. That doesn't get people listening to me about talking about the NHL rule book. A chaotic game with terrible defensive play and shitty goaltending. That's what happened last night with elite talent. But now it's screw Cale Makar. Who gives a shit about Cale Makar? Oh, Cale Makar, that goal shouldn't have counted. You shouldn't have had 3 points. It was offside. Why are they changing the rules on the fly? I don't know. But if we don't have video review, then there's none of this discussion. It's moot. There's nobody yelling that was offside. And if there is, it's Ron from Edmonton in his mom's basement. And who gives a shit about Ron? Anyway, I don't think they're going to get rid of this stupid challenge system. I wish they would. It would really help my life in a big way. I don't ask for much. I don't think I do anyway. Could you get rid of the challenge system? Get rid of the gimmick, aka the shootout. What else do I want? You can eliminate field goal kicking in football. That would help me. I'd be pro that. That doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, I mean, that's it. World hunger. Guns. I'm talking just in my sports world here. Could you eliminate these couple things? Imagine just eliminating video review. That's all I'm asking for. If I was writing to Santa Claus as a kid, that's not that big of an ask. I'm not asking for the Lego kit that I guess is like crazy expensive now, I heard today. At work, this kid asking for a Lego kit. I looked it up online, the Star Wars Lego kit. It was like $3,000. Make the Death Star and all these. Is it $3,000 for stupid Lego Star Wars kit? What the hell happened here? All these spinoffs are making money, I guess. Who knew? Not me. Haven't watched any of them, but apparently somebody is, because $3,000 for a Lego kit? What are we, Top Gun? I guess Top Gun's doing great in theaters, by the way. Still not going to see it. Unless a friend is just like, you gotta come with me, but I'm not. Is anybody of interest in seeing Top Gun? If you have seen Top Gun, you listen to the show while we're live or even after, send me a DM, send me a message. Was it good? Did you enjoy it? Was Tiny Tom Cruise incredible? Or just adequate like his other roles? It's kind of, Tom Cruise is kind of like his height. Adequate. Just okay. Anyway, back to the ice. Goaltending last night. My God. It was one of the worst goaltending head-to-heads I've seen in a long time, because you go Mike Smith, Darcy Kuemper to start. And Mike Smith's letting in a lot of stinkers. The Makar one was a beauty, but again, at the same time, Smith is just, you got to make some saves here, keep your team in the game. He's just not doing it. So I'm looking at him like, okay, Edmonton's in trouble. But then Darcy Kuemper is letting in weak goal after weak goal. And then to start the second period, he's late to get to the ice. And you're like, what the hell is going on? And then he has to leave the game early in the second period after the Ryan McLeod goal. So Kemper's playing brutal and Mike Smith is playing terrible. And then after Mikko Rantanen scores, or after JT Compher, or was it Cogliano goal, it was the JT Compher second goal of the game. Mike Smith's pulled. In comes Mikko Koskinen, and Mike Smith's night's over. He was terrible. He wasn't any good. But you got Mike Smith pulled. Darcy Kuemper's hurt. So in comes Pavel Francouz, and in comes Mikko Koskinen. Two guys that are two of the most unreliable backups in the NHL. Now, Koskinen was solid. He led in the Andrew Cogliano goal. He had no chance on the play. But Francouz was a big reason why the Edmonton Oilers got back in the game. McDavid scores one on him at the end of the second period. Derek Ryan scores in the third. Then Nugent Hopkins scores in the power play to make it a one-goal game. So the big story here about the goaltending is nobody expected it to be as good as it's going to be in the Eastern Conference Final between the Rangers and Lightning. But I don't think anybody expected to be this poor either. The fact that Mike Smith couldn't make a save to save his life. The fact that Francouz came in and was terrible in relief. It seemed like whoever could get the last shot was going to win the game. And now as we head into game 2, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot up in the air because Mike Smith was pulled. He didn't play well, and Jay Woodcroft said today he's undecided on who's going to start game 2. Koskinen played decent in the relief effort, but at the same time, starting Mikko Koskinen in game 2 seems really unlikely to me. Mike Smith wasn't great so far in these playoffs, but Koskinen, if you're thinking this guy's going to get you over the hump, get you to the last series, you're pie in the sky. But Colorado is the more interesting development because Darcy Kuemper left the game. He's hurt, and there's no break in these series. They play Thursday night, game 2. Then they play Saturday. It's every second night they play. And if Pavel Francouz is the starting goaltender, then this series is wide open yet again because Francouz was a goalie for a period of time for Colorado in the bubble when Philip Grubauer got hurt back then when he was their starting goalie. Then Francouz got hurt. They had to turn to Michael Hutchinson. But Francouz has not been great since coming over. Colorado has since re-signed him. I really don't know why. He's got 3 wins in the playoffs, oddly enough, in relief where Darcy Kuemper was pulled or hurt. And he's got an .899 save percentage. The guy is he's not a great goaltender. He lets in a lot of bad goals. And potentially we could see a Mike Smith Francouz for the rest of this series. We could see a Koskinen Francouz, which would be crazy, with 2 European goaltenders getting the starts. But either way, this series is wide open. And for Edmonton, who are the inferior team, Colorado's better. They do have their flaws. Like I mentioned, the Manson line and some of the McKinnon line defensively wasn't great last night against McDavid. They clearly lost that battle. But if the goaltending for Colorado is Francouz, this series is far more intriguing to me. I think it's going to be a much closer series because Darcy Kuemper, although he has his faults, is a starting goaltender in the NHL. He's proven that. He did it in Arizona, but he's just been injury-prone and inconsistent so far during his career. Where Francouz has hardly proven that he's a backup goalie. He hasn't proven that he can play, yet alone come in and play big games in a conference final. Mike Smith has played in a conference final. It was a decade ago, 2012 conference final with Arizona, but he has proven that he could get a team to this point. So even with Mike Smith's terrible game 1 and the way he's played so far, these playoffs was just been adequate. Mike Smith being in net is a massive upgrade. It's a massive ace in the hole over Pavel Francouz for a large majority of this series. So for Edmonton last night, they had a great comeback, but it doesn't matter because they don't win the game. But you can look at it and say we can score goals on this team. We know that. If we can tighten up defensively, if we can gap up like I recommended earlier, don't fall back and let Colorado just get copious amounts of energy, just be able to skate through a neutral zone unimpeded, then that might be a good idea, a good recipe to win. So now I'm tomorrow, Jay Woodcroft said he's not announcing who's starting game 2. I'm not surprised. Me and Seamus had this conversation yesterday about, gambling and having these lineups in earlier. And, this is another thing coaches should do. They should have to release who's starting at least by tomorrow morning. If you don't want to say today, I really don't know why. It doesn't help or hurt Colorado, the players aren't watching much film when you're playing every other day. You're playing a game. You're resting. A lot of guys are hurt. You're just playing game to game, hoping to continue to win, continue to move forward. And a guy like Josh Manson's hoping to get that out of his brain to play a better game in game 2. But, this is a situation for Colorado where you're thrown into a loop again. You had Kuemper. You're relying on him staying healthy. Francouz was the guy you re-signed as your backup. You trust him to get wins for this team? Well, you might be in a position where you have to. You might not feel that confident, but he's the only guy you can turn to in these big situations. But it's an ace it's a difference maker now because, yes, Colorado's the better team. Yes, they had the better goalie coming in. But if their goaltender's out, you have a backup against Mike Smith. Mike Smith becomes the better goaltender in this equation. He was terrible in game 1. I would go back to him in game 2. Yes, Koskinen was good in relief, but Mike Smith has gotten you this far. He didn't play great against Calgary, but he played good enough to win. Koskinen, yes, he played good in that relief outing, but we've also seen Koskinen let in 5 goals in a heartbeat himself, and it wouldn't surprise me if you see him pulled in game 2 if he got the start. You might need Koskinen again in this series because Smith might get pulled again. Who knows how this series is going to go? You're going to need guys to play well. I think Koskinen should go into every game ready to play. I think that's the mindset now. It sounds negative, but expect the opposing team to put up at least 4 or 5 goals on you and be ready to step in. There are games I think backups are just sitting there saying, I'll never get in tonight. If you're in the Eastern Conference Final, I think if you're Brian Elliott, I think if you're Alexander Georgiev, you're pretty comfortable that you're not going to hit the ice in this series. Unless there's a blowout one of the games, you're going to be sitting there pretty comfortable with the hat on. If you're Koskinen, if you're Francouz, if Kuemper's healthy, you should be ready to go. You should be preparing like you are the starting goaltender because both teams can score, and who knows, there might be an injury on either side that leads to you getting an opportunity to play. So, really interesting game 1. It was a crazy manic game. I'm interested to see what the two teams bring, what they do to change it in game 2. Like I said, game 2 is tomorrow night back in Colorado. We'll talk about it tomorrow on the podcast and give updates on the starting goaltender situations on both sides, how Darcy Kuemper is doing. Bednar just said they had trust in Francouz if they need him to start because he didn't have any updates on Kuemper yet. So we'll wait to see on that. But really fun game 1, and we'll touch on it more tomorrow. Now, also tonight we have game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final between Rangers and the New York Rangers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it'll be Tampa Bay's first game in 9 days. They've just been sitting around waiting, to see who they're going to play. The Rangers in Carolina ultimately went 7 games. So it was a tight series. It was a battle from start to finish, but the Rangers come out on top. And now we sit here with, I mentioned the storyline of the Western Conference Final is really McDavid versus McKinnon, 2 of the best players in the world. And I look at the Eastern Conference Final, and you could label it a bunch of different things. And let's start with the defense. Adam Fox versus Victor Hedman. I mentioned Cale Makar is in that discussion for the best defenseman in the world, but Adam Fox played fantastic. He's played fantastic in these playoffs. He has won a Norris Trophy, and he's got 11 points in elimination games so far this postseason. Pretty incredible. Then you have Victor Hedman, a Norris Trophy winner himself, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, a Conn Smythe winner, and regarded by most as the best defenseman in the world. So you have the great Swedish defenseman who's been at the top of the throne for some time. He's always nominated for the Vezina, but it's only won once, which is crazy to me. I mean, the fact that Drew Doughty and Victor Hedman have only won 1 Norris and Erik Karlsson won 2 is really staggering to me. But again, that's a story for another day. But you have Hedman, who's got the throne right now. And then you have Adam Fox, who's the American upstart, who's had a great start to his career, come out of college, really taken the game by storm. No fear in New York, has embraced it, embraced the leadership position with the team, and has proven night in, night out that he can deliver, that he is a difference maker, that he's one of the best players in all of the National Hockey League. So both these guys do it differently. Fox is an offensive defenseman that does lack positioning in his own zone. He can get caught up. But what helps Adam Fox is having a guy like Ryan Lindgren to play with. Adam Fox is more like Erik Karlsson than he is Hedman or Doughty, in my opinion, where he's not as dynamic as Erik Karlsson, but his defensive instincts are not always great. He does make passes that are ill-advised, that aren't the smartest decision at the time, and they can lead to problems for the Rangers, especially because they don't play a great structural game. Where Hedman is the jack of all trades. He can play at both ends of the ice. He will block shots. He will go up against the opponent's top line for the whole series and shut them down. But he's also a guy that is a lethal power play player. He had 11 goals. The first Stanley Cup that Tampa won, was clearly the best player in all those playoffs. Has a great ability from the point to get shots through. He's a guy that just kind of picks the far post and he finds a way to beat goaltenders from screens and things of that nature. And he also moves like a gazelle. For his size, he might be the best skater in the history of the NHL. He just moves effortlessly. And the two guys are extremely different, but they're both stars in the game. They both have won a Norris Trophy, and they are the best players at their respective divisions. So that's a way you could market this series. And then there's also Shesterkin and Vasilevsky, the two great goalies. Now, maybe the marketing would be opposed to this because they're both Russian goaltenders, where, you have two Russian goaltenders, and with what's going on with the Ukraine and, talking about Russian athletes, anything associated with Russia right now is just a negative. You're not allowed to do it. It's shunned, where the athletes have done nothing to earn this title, but you're putting it on the athletes and not holding Vladimir Putin accountable. So it's really quite hypocritical, if you ask me. But nevertheless, you have Vasilevsky, who has done it all. Vezina Trophy, two-time Stanley Cup champion. He's won the Jennings Trophy back in the day. He is a Conn Smythe winner and is maybe the most clutch goaltender of his era. Six of the last 11 elimination games he's competed in, he's got a shutout in those games. He just shows up in the big moment. He makes the big save. He doesn't fold under the pressure. Where Shesterkin is hoping to get to Vasilevsky's level. He's hoping to rise there, where he won the Vezina this year. He's on a young team. He's taking over for the great Henrik Lundqvist, who was the face of New York, who was the man in New York City, just beloved by everybody, and big shoes to fill. But Shesterkin has taken the net and not looked back. He was a battle for a while with him and Georgiev to see who was going to be the number one goaltender, but Shesterkin closed that door quickly and said, "This is my city, this is my team." And the Rangers were able to go from Mike Richter to Henrik Lundqvist to now Igor Shesterkin in a 30-year, turnaround, which is just crazy to think about. But these two guys, yes, they're goaltenders, and you could say, well, you don't want to market around these two guys because you don't want a low-scoring series, but I think that's what you're going to get. These two guys are the best at their position. Fox and Hedman are the best players at their position. There's no Braden Point for Tampa. There's no, Anthony Cirelli is a good player. I think Nikita Kucherov is the biggest name offensively for either one of these teams. He's been a great player. He's got 30 points in back-to-back postseasons. He's been incredibly clutch. He's a guy that shows up in the big moments as well. But again, he's not McDavid. He's not McKinnon. He's not Makar. Then you look at New York. They have guys that are proving themselves to be good playoff players. Mika Zibanejad has played at a superstar level in this postseason. Artemi Panarin, I said yesterday, he's the most noteworthy player on the Rangers when it comes to star power, when it comes to what he's done. But he has been underwhelming in the postseason. He's been a guy that hasn't worked that hard. He's been a guy that you look at him and say, well, what's he really doing? Is he having that big of an impact? Has he been that great for our team? And you look at Kreider and Zibanejad, and these guys, they're more effective than the guy who has the most superstar potential, has the most superstar name on this whole roster. So there's that as well. This series, I think, comes down to goaltending, and it comes down to the defense. I think if Tampa's defense can defend like they did against Florida and Toronto, where they're blocking shots, you get a lead early and you hold on because Tampa is limited offensively with no Braden Point, and just asking Anthony Cirelli to try to play against the opposing team's top line for 7 whole games in a series. You're going to need to play low-scoring games. You're going to have to play muddy hockey where you go in the trenches and you battle. It's going to be an unconventional series for Tampa, where I felt in years past when they played the Islanders in back-to-back conference finals, they were a team that played more high tempo. They were a team that scored more goals, but they accepted that, okay, we're playing the Islanders. We can win 2-1 hockey games. It's not how we love to play it, but we can do it. Where this series, the Rangers have more offensive firepower with Zibanejad, with Kreider, even Panarin, Andrew Kopp, Fox, Keandre Miller. And Tampa's going to have to play a more reserve style, defending style, because they just don't have the firepower to match what New York is going to bring to them on a nightly basis. So I'm looking forward to the chess match. Can New York get some offense going? In tonight's game, I expect Tampa to be a little woozy in the first period. I expect them to come out a little flat. They haven't played 9 days, but another narrative you could sell is, it's the layoff versus the fatigue. It's complacency versus fatigue, where Tampa's been off for a while. They had a week off just to sit there and wait for their opponent, where New York is playing. They played Monday night in Carolina. They had to travel back to New York. So, yes, you have home ice in this series like you did in round 1. But at the same time, do you have enough in the tank to get by Tampa Bay? Tampa Bay has played more hockey than anybody, so they should be tired as well. But to me, rest is going to do good for them. They needed this break on their body so that they can push through here. But a lot of different story. I think tonight's game is interesting. I want to see how the first period goes and how Tampa comes out, because they're going to be on the road again. Do they come out with energy, or are they a little slow? I think John Cooper is going to have his team ready to play. Tampa's a team that always seems to be ready to go. But another thing is defensive matchups. Who gets on the ice against who? You got Hedman, Chernak. What does John Cooper decide to do against the Rangers' top forwards? And I see on the line we got a man who I assume hates the New York Rangers because they're in the same division as his Columbus Blue Jackets. But we'll ask him. I guess they do have his former coach on the staff, so maybe it's a soft spot for the Rangers. But we'll bring in, for the first time in a little bit, Ben Murray. Ben, how are you?
Doing good, Jug. Thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure. And I wish I could say I hate the New York Rangers, but they've never, like Columbus and New York, have never really had much animosity over the years. Columbus doesn't have much rivalries. We try to create them with Washington and Pittsburgh, but they kind of laugh it off and whatever. So we try.
What about Panarin? Do you have a hatred for him?
He in Columbus, we have like the tier list of players we hate. To me, at least on my tier list, Panarin's like tier 2. It's like Jeff Carter, Pierre-Luc Dubois. They're the tier 1. We don't even talk about those guys. I don't even like saying their names. Panarin's a bit different. I sort of have him on tier 2. It's tough because he's he's a likable guy. The way he plays, it's exciting to watch. He's always smiling. It looks like he's having a good time. And it wasn't like we sort of drafted and developed him. And he's kind of known all along that he wanted to go to the bright lights, big city. But so while I'm not a fan of him, I'm not actively rooting for him. The hatred isn't quite on that tier 1 level.
Right. I saw on your Instagram a couple weeks ago that you were at a Leaf playoff game, right?
I was, yeah. I went to was it game 5, the big comeback from the Leafs? It was
okay.
It was a good game, I'll be honest. I felt a bit guilty being there. And at the end of the game, I was really just jealous of the fans because I'm sitting there, they're all having the time of their lives. It's so exciting. And I'm just it was cool. Obviously, the atmosphere is unreal and it's cool to be there, but I couldn't get on their excitement level, which sucked a little bit, but it was still pretty cool.
So yeah, I go to games, and I went to one in Boston in the playoffs, and I find it really, it's kind of uncomfortable. I have to try to figure out how to do this, but when you're not a fan of the team and you're in the building, like people expect you to be, fired up when the team scores. Like, how did you approach that? Did you high five everybody? Did you get fired up, or how'd you mingle with that?
Yes, it's such a good point, and it's so true too, because it is a bit awkward. Like when they score and stuff, I stand up. I give it like I don't want to be the guy that's like actively like booing them or pissed off or anything. And
Right.
it's not like I don't hate the Leafs. Like if it was like Boston or Montreal or somebody like that, I probably wouldn't even like clap at all. But I sort of give them like a soft clap, but I'm not like everybody is high fiving like you talk about, but I'm not doing any of that stuff. But when my parents found out I was going, my dad's like, you have to wear a Leafs jersey. You have to. I'm like, there's no chance I am wearing a Leafs jersey. I don't care what the game is. I refuse to do that. So he wasn't too happy about that, but what can you do?
Is he a Leaf fan?
Yeah, he's a Leafs fan. He went to game 7, that lucky guy.
Oof. Oof.
It didn't end too well. So we all know how that went.
Yeah, how it felt different this year for the Leafs. I was watching, and I'm like, I thought they were going to win the series against Tampa. And you're in the GTA, like, what was it like after that loss? Like, what was the mood like, after that weekend?
Yeah, and I sort of like I thought they were the better team, if I'm being honest. I thought they deserved to win the series, but they just can't get over that hump for whatever reason, which I'm sure there's probably lots. But the vibe did feel weirdly different this year. It was I don't know if like they've had so much disappointment over the years. They're just tired of being like the same old song and dance where they're pissed off and sad. Like this year, it almost like even was it Keith that said after in the handshake line, he's like, "Oh, they
Mm,
said how tough we played them or something like that." It's like they were like happy to take Tampa to 7. It was kind of a weird atmosphere, and that's almost like how the fans felt too. It was almost like they were happy to get the participation trophy to take Tampa to 7 games, which that was a bit odd, but I mean, I guess I sort of get it too when you're just used to it every single year after year after year. Like, I guess you can only take so much at a certain point.
well, you as a Columbus fan, you're the only person that knows what it's like to beat Tampa. Nobody else can.
It's so weird to think back, like Columbus is the last team to beat Tampa. Like that feels like it was like 20 years ago. It's insane.
Yeah.
And you look at like the roster of that Columbus team to what it is now, it's crazy.
Yeah, that does feel like 10 years ago, but it was only a couple of years ago. If you
Yeah.
can believe, through the pandemic and everything, it does feel like it was a long, long time ago. Um, Rangers Tampa. How are you feeling going into this series?
I think it'll be a good series. I mean, everybody obviously the big matchup is the two big Russians in net, and I could easily see it coming down to which one of them plays better. Can you score on Vasilevsky? I mean, that guy's just
Yeah.
he's outstanding. Like he's on a completely different level, especially when the games get tougher and the games get closer and you get deeper into the playoffs. So I don't know how you could bet against Tampa with him in net. Obviously, Point is a big question mark. If they can get him back, that's huge. But I like the Rangers team. The Rangers sort of, I think, have a bit of a recipe in terms of what it takes to get to the cup and to win a cup. Like they have the beast in net. They have the beast on the back end and Adam
Mhm.
Fox there, and they have some pretty probably I would say top tier to borderline elite offensive talent there in Panarin and who else Zibanejad and those guys. So I think it'll be a pretty close series. I know a lot of people seem to be thinking Tampa Bay will take it to them pretty easy, and they've had the long rest, which usually you have that rust versus rest
Mhm.
sort of concern. But I think Tampa the rest was much needed, and I think that was good for them. So I think it'll be a long, close series. I'd probably lean Tampa probably in 7. Take the cop out answer there.
Yeah, I agree. I think they needed the rest for sure. I think they'll probably be rusty tonight in the first period, but I think they'll shake it off pretty quickly. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see this being an easy series because I agree. I think New York's tough. Like Zibanejad's playing like a superstar level in that second round. He really, and Lafreniere has really found another level. Hedl is playing well. You mentioned Adam Fox. I worry about Lindgren on the back end because he's so important with playing with Fox, and the guy just looks like he's put together with duct tape right now because every type of injury he can get, he's getting. But he's bad. The fact that he's still playing is a blessing in and of itself. But I'm looking forward to, because I think I was saying Tampa's going to have to play more like the Islanders, who they played the last couple of years, where they don't have the scoring without point that they did in the past. And I think it's going to be up to their great defense, which I think is unmatched when it comes to that level in the postseason that's left, to keep games low scoring and play sound defensive hockey.
Yeah, right. I think they absolutely have the capability to do that with like Hedman, McDonough, and those boys. Chernak's a bit underrated, I think. He doesn't get the shine he always needs. But yeah, Lindgren, he's one of those guys I pick up in fantasy hockey every year just for the shot blocks. Like, you're already so banged up, and the way he plays, like, it's got to be tough to, when your whole body's injured, to continue to play that way, where you're throwing the body around and you're eating shots for breakfast. So I do think that's a big concern. Keandre Miller has been fun to watch. He's sort of somebody I've never really paid much attention to until these playoffs, but he's been good to watch. I like him and his game. So there's a lot of fun players in the series. Like you mentioned, Lafreniere sort of having a bit of a coming out party. I think these playoffs, they're still, if Capo Caco could ever do anything, they'd really have something to look forward to.
If he could find a way to finish, he's always around the net. I mean, I think of that empty netter against Carolina in game 1 where he missed that by a foot, and it was like the easiest goal ever. Like, he is always in the right position. I like him. I like the way he plays, but he's got bricks for hands. Yeah.
If he could ever figure it out, it just adds another weapon to a long list of guys that they have. And Tampa, the way they can rebuild that third line is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it'll never be quite as good, I don't think, as it was last year. I mean, that may be one of the best third lines you'll ever see. But like, they just replaced Ross Colton's a stud. He's good. Nick Paul's all of a sudden in these playoffs, he's looked fantastic. And Hagel, who hasn't been as great as I think they expected when he came over from Chicago, but I mean, he's still a good third line player. So the way they're able to just do that year after year is pretty incredible.
In the other series, and last night's game was crazy. 8-6, no defense, no goaltending. I guess I'll start off. Did you think Cale Makar, you think that was a goal? Or was it offside? Because that's all that's being discussed today. Nothing about
I know. I was saying to a buddy earlier, I'm like, it sort of took away from how gross of a shot that Makar had.
Oh, it was so deadly. Like, just straight bar down. Yeah.
And no matter what I say here, Twitter will just, the trolls will argue the other way. But I think, like, it was kind of a dust call. I think it should be offside, but here's my sort of thought process on it. I'm not sure what your opinion on the Blake Coleman kick was. No matter how many times I watch that, I will never understand how that was a kick. Like, you can break it down and show me all the angles. I'll never understand how that is ruled a kick. The play last night, I can sort of see how they came to the conclusion where he touched the puck and then he didn't touch it again until the guy was out of the zone. So I can sort of see their thought process on it. Do I agree with it? No, I think it's offside. If Makar was sort of like looking at the guy and waiting for him to come out, then I could see maybe, but he touched the puck and he's clearly just skating straight forward as fast as he can. I don't think he had a clue if his guy was onside or offside. I think it should have been offside, but I can see their reasoning at least.
Yeah, I always I hate video review. I would get rid of it altogether if I could, every sport. But in the real time, I didn't think it was offside. And I'm sure you thought you were just watching the game, same thing. Oh, you're like, holy shit, Makar just went bar down. Like, what a go. You're not thinking, was Valerie Nichushkin offside?
Yeah.
I agree with you, it was offside. I just wish there wasn't this whole challenge because we don't know what's what. I totally agree with you. Blake Coleman, I don't know how that wasn't a goal. I'd be livid if I was on the ice and that was not called a goal. This one, I think if you're Edmonton, Woodcroft was losing it. I understand why, because it looked offside to me, and then they score in the power play, which made it even worse, and you lose by 1 goal. So who knows? You go to overtime, you got Pavel Francouz, who can't make a save in the third period. Like, who knows? So I just, there's no consistency with these calls. You don't know what's what from one ruling to the next.
Yeah, you're bang on. You have no idea. Every time they go to video review, like I was watching that play, I'm like, why is this taking longer than 30 seconds? I thought it was so obvious that
Right, me
that's
too.
offside.
Yeah.
But anyways, they come back with that. It was the same with the Coleman. I'm like, why are they looking at this so long? I don't understand it. So no one has any idea anymore. And it's frustrating that it takes that this is what we're talking about all day, right? Like we should
Yeah.
be talking about how crazy of a game it was and all the goals and Makar shot and all that, and instead we're talking about stupid video review, like you said, and was it offside? Was it? So it's a bit frustrating, but um, I don't know. The NHL has some problems to fix, I think, in the off season.
They got a few. Yeah. I said this earlier. I want to get your thoughts. I think in maybe the future, maybe the not too distant future, that we're going to see Cale Makar as a better player than Nathan McKinnon. Think I'm crazy for saying that, or do you think it's a possibility down the line?
No, I think that's a definite possibility. The guy is an absolute machine, and he's not even really close, I would say, to entering what they consider like the prime years of his career.
Right.
And it's just like I don't know if people always appreciate enough how hard it is to score goals at the NHL as a forward, let
Mhm.
alone as a defenseman on the back end, like night in and night out. And the way the guy can shoot, the way he can skate on those edges, like he's an absolute machine. So I don't think that's out of the possibility at all. He's so good. He's so good. Like you look at fantasy leagues again, bring it back to fantasy, but he's got to be the most valuable player like in every league because the defenseman points is so valuable. So I think just him being a defenseman and what he can do and produce, and he's a decent defenseman defensively as well. Like
Mhm.
he's so good. Like it's insane.
Yeah, I just think he's so fast. He's like a video game with him and like him and McDavid might be the two best skaters in the whole NHL. McKinnon's great, but he skates different. These two are just like effortless, like just they're gone before you even know they're there. And yeah, I love his edge work, his passing, and it doesn't hurt him that he plays with Devon Toews, who I think's been a great partner for him. Those two play so well together, and Edmonton would kill to have one of those two on their team because last night Nurse had a tough game, I thought. Bouchard seems to have a tough game every night. But it kind of helped out Colorado that Josh Manson and Jack Johnson really were out to lunch as well.
I can't believe Jack Johnson's still hanging around and playing in
I
a
know.
actual playoff game. That's absurd.
He might win a cup this year, Jack
Yeah,
Johnson.
that's sad. That's sad.
Yeah, well, yeah, you used to love him back in the day.
I
Columbus
did. He
Day.
had, if you go look at his hockey DB, there was one good year where him and David Savard were one of the best pairs in the NHL. I have no idea how it happened or why, but like they were lights out together. So we had our one good year, Jack. And other than that,
I don't think we've ever talked about this, but are you a golf fan?
uh, I'm like a casual golf fan. I'll watch the majors and a few tournaments here and there, but I'm not like super into it every week. But I
Yeah,
did see like the news with that what is it?
Dustin
LIV
Johnson.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Dustin Johnson to me I mean, like have you heard him talk? He's a bit of like it almost seems like he's not quite all there all the time.
Yeah.
So I think to him it's just like guy wants money. He's gonna get a ton of it. And I don't think it's like a huge deal as many people are making it out to be. Like, go do what you want to do and get your cash. I don't think he cares at all about like records and wins on the
No.
PGA Tour at all. So go do your thing, DJ.
Yeah, I don't think the PGA Tour should overreact either. Because to your point, he's the most boring person I've ever heard speak. Like he's just, and he's not interesting. Like he doesn't push the sport forward. If you're losing I said this, losing a DeChambeau would be a bigger deal because people have an opinion about DeChambeau. They love him or they hate him. Either way, it's great because you're going to get clicks from that. DJ's just like, well, it's Wayne's son-in-law, and he's got a good-looking wife. Like that's all they know about him.
No, exactly. And I think to that point too, there's not really any guys on the list that jumped up to me that I'm like,
No.
oh, that moves the needle. Like, so I
Kevin
hadn't
Na.
heard of most of them, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal either, but I just found it funny how that's, gained a lot of traction over the last couple days.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't read up too much on this new league, but it's like a team event. So like there's captains like drafting teams. Like I'm just picturing DJ like being a captain and he's getting to the end of the list and he hasn't heard of any of these guys. Like, yeah, sure, I'll take you because
Yeah,
I
he's
got
gonna have to
no
be like, red shirt, I'll take you.
one.
He won't know some Corn Ferry Tour guy that he's never seen before.
Yeah, literally.
I saw you're at a Jays game recently as well. Or no, you're at a Cubs game. I thought you were at a Jays game as well. I see
Yeah,
you're posting
just
on social
everywhere.
media. But yeah, how is Wrigley? First off, have you been there before prior to your trip?
This was my first time. It was awesome. I would definitely recommend to anybody if you ever get the chance to go to Wrigley. Such a cool environment and just like it's 20 minutes north of downtown Chicago and it's called Wrigleyville. So it's really just in like the middle of this town. It's kind of neat. There's just restaurants and little like kind of gift shops and stuff everywhere. And then just a big baseball diamond in the middle of the town. But it's awesome. Like you don't really realize how weird the Rogers Center is. The Rogers Center is it's fine, like it is what it is. But when you go to these other ball diamonds, you kind of feels more like a baseball venue. So Wrigley was awesome. I would definitely recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, I'd only been to Rogers Center, and then I went to Fenway a few weeks ago, and I was like, okay, this is a different experience.
Yeah.
It's so old, but at the same time, it was beautiful, and just seeing everything. I totally agree. But your Jays are red hot, 6 straight wins. Alejandro Kirk is mashing home runs, 2 home runs last night. They're 8 games above 500, despite the fact that, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hasn't exactly had a great season thus far. Bichette's been pretty average, but their starting pitching has been good. How do you feel about the Jays at this point of the season?
Well, first off, just on the Kirk bombs, I think the balls might be juiced again because his first home run that he hit last night, I don't know if you saw it, but it went over by like a foot. And I'm like, oh, that's a fly out to the left
It
field.
looked like a routine fly ball.
So we might have the juice balls back. So that's exciting for everybody, except maybe Rob Manfred. I don't know. But yeah, the J season has been super weird because, like you said, their record's good. They're 8 games or 7 games over 500, something like that. The bats haven't been great for long stretches of time. Like you said, Vladdy still can't really hit. He was 0 for 5 again last night. Bo had a couple hits, but the pitching's been outstanding. Gosman and Manoah have been absolute studs. It feels like they can play so much better, which is encouraging because they've also played the hardest schedule in the entire league to date. So I mean, once they haven't played Baltimore yet, and they have some series against weaker teams coming up. I think hopefully Vladdy can wake things up a little bit, and the pitching stays consistent. But I mean, it's got to be encouraging to know I don't think anyways they've played nearly to their potential, and they're well in the playoff race right now. They have a playoff spot pretty comfortably with the new addition of a third playoff team. So I like where they're at right now. And it's weird because they haven't played well, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the American League isn't all that strong. I mean, they played the White Sox last night, who've been one of the more disappointing teams in all of baseball to me anyway. They're much more talented team than the record shows, and they continue to lose games. The Red Sox have been a disaster. They had a tough series against Baltimore over the weekend. The Cincinnati Reds beat them last night in a 2-1 game. Just the second they kind of turn it around, they've hit the skids again. And I didn't think they'd be a playoff team to start. So they're not a big threat. The Angels are falling off. They're in deep trouble. We'll talk about them in a minute. But Nate Pearson can be an X factor for me because he hasn't pitched in the bigs yet this year. But I think he just needs to be a bullpen guy. And I try to sell him on it. That's a really important spot. He can pitch multiple innings, but he can be a middle inning guy where I think I like Garcia, but I prefer Simber to pitch the eighth. You have Romano, if you could have maybe Pearson go 6-7 potentially because you can't pitch more than 6 innings now. Maybe that's something that the Jays could look at internally as a deadline move, if you will.
Yeah, and until you mentioned right there, like I almost totally forgot Nate Pearson was even a person anymore. Like I feel like I haven't heard much about him lately. But I totally agree. His role could be like extremely similar to what we saw with Aaron Sanchez in was it
Yes.
2015, where he's sort of the up and coming prospect, wants to be a starter eventually, but sort of has to make his mark first. I think the bullpen's the perfect spot for Pearson, and there's no chance they're just gonna give him starts with the way that rotation is pitching right now. And he hasn't pitched in the major leagues all year. So I think the bullpen's the perfect spot for him. You can tell him, hey, just go out there and throw it as hard as you can because with your stuff that can play. So that's a huge weapon. Like you said, it's almost like a mid-season trade acquisition where you just get a guy back on the team and healthy because I think that bullpen definitely needs another arm. They've been some of the arms like Baraki, who is a guy I like, always root for, but he's just been god awful, and they sent him down. I think it was just yesterday.
Yeah.
Merriweather, he was all right last night, but I still don't really have all that much confidence in him yet. So there's not like other than Simber and Romano, like I don't have all that much confidence in a lot of those bullpen guys still.
The Yankees continue to find ways to win. Judge is playing like an MVP. The Yankees, Jays are obviously trying to track them down. They're still a far ways away, but stacking up the two teams, do you still feel good about the Jays potentially if they have to play the Yankees down the road?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they played somewhat recently, and the Yankees sort of took it to them. But just something about that Yankees lineup. I still look at the pitching staff, and it really, they've had a lot of guys that to me are overperforming, and maybe they'll prove me wrong, and maybe they'll be outstanding all year. But like Nestor Cortez, I still don't understand how that guy is like a Cy
Yeah.
Young candidate right now. Like I watch him pitch, I'm like, there's no way this guy should be dicing up any team, let alone the Jays. So I don't maybe, and again, maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I don't think he'll keep up that Cy Young performance all year. Some of their other starters too, like I think
Yeah,
they're
Tylon's been unreal too. Like he's
yeah.
got like a sub-2 ERA.
Yeah, so like guys like that, I feel like are going to sort of regress a little bit at least. So I think their pitching is going to get worse. Their bullpen has been like that was probably going into this season like the thing they're most confident in, and it's been as of late like it was pretty dominant for a while there, but it's been shaken up a little in the past couple weeks. And that lineup, I mean, they're going to rake with when you have all those big bats in there, but they're still
I
like
still
a
look
lot.
at it and I look at Joey Gallo playing every day, and that would
Yeah.
scare me because he's not great. He's okay in the field, but his bat, like I think he's batting like under 200 for the season. It's real close anyway. He's not, and Judge is great. Stanton, when they're on, they're great, but it's only one injury, and those guys are out for 2 months because that
Yeah, and
seems
we've
to
seen
happen every year.
Stanton's already been injured, so I
Right.
feel like it's only a matter of time for Judge, even though I never want to root for injuries. But like with those guys, like we see every year, it's bound to happen at some point when they're that big and that strong and swinging that hard. So I don't know. We'll see. I think I like where the Jays are at, and I think like I mentioned the schedule, the Jays have played the hardest schedule, so I think we'll see the gap between the Jays and the Yankees start to close a little here as we go through here.
Yeah, I hate that they put all the Baltimore series in the damn summer. So you got the one team they put on damn TV. Obviously, I got the package, so I can go watch other teams. But
Yeah.
Orioles, Blue Jays on a Friday night. I'm so clamoring to see that series.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Can't
but
wait.
yeah, John Means on the mound should be
Yeah.
fun. Do you believe in the New York Mets?
I want to say yes. Like obviously they've played really well so far. A lot of their guys have like Francisco Lindor. He's sort of finally living up to that ginormous contract they gave him. Guys like Jeff McNeil look really good.
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't know if this team's all that good or the like division around them is just terrible because that division
Yeah.
stinks. I do
The
think
Phillies can't save a game to save their life. They
yeah, the
blow it
Phillies
they blow it every damn night.
they're terrible, and I mean, like you said, they just blow the saves every other game. But I do think the Braves will sort of turn it around here eventually. I feel like they're just too good of a team not to. But like the Marlins, who I thought might take a step forward this year, it doesn't look like they're going to do a whole lot. And then the Nationals are just one of the worst teams in the league. They're not going to do much. So it's tough to really know how good the Mets are. Their pitching's been really good. Bassett's been great. Scherzer's obviously you know what you're getting. And I mean, if they can get a healthy DeGrom back, how can they not be a contender with like that starting pitching? So I like where they're at. I do think their lineup may be overperforming a bit at the moment, but I definitely see them. I'd be shocked if they don't make the playoffs come the
Yeah,
end of the year.
you're gonna have to really fall off a cliff
Yeah,
to miss the playoffs. But they look good. It's good to see them succeed some. And Pete Alonso is having a great season, so kudos to him because he's racking up the RBIs. More pressure in the second half / three quarters of the season. San Diego Padres or Los Angeles Angels?
That's a good question. That's two very comparable teams. I want I want to say probably the Angels,
Mm-hmm.
just because I don't know. I feel like the American League's a little bit weaker, and that like they've should be have been good for so long now, and you got the superstars like they do, and Trout and Otani, like they're just so they got to get over that hump. They got to do it for Trout. Trout almost feels like McDavid in a way where I know he had his
Yeah.
run early, but then the Oilers had that long sort of stretch where they couldn't get anything done. And at this point, like Trout's been around so long and he's played, was it just a wild card game, if that?
Yeah, he's played three postseason games in his career.
Yeah, like that's insane to me that the best player in the game has only played three postseason games in I don't know how long, 10 years, probably around that. So I think the Angels they have to get it done, and if not now, then like
When
when are they going to do it? So because they've had break, like I was watching that series against the Jays, and like a lot of these names I don't know much about, but they're having good years, like the Walsh and Ward guys. So
mm-hmm.
they have guys, whether they have the pitching to do it. We'll see. But you mentioned the Padres too, and like with all the huge contracts they've been given out recently, I also think it would be a disappointment for them not to make some noise. So I think both teams have a ton of pressure, but the Angels, it feels like they got to get it done at some point.
Yeah, I mean, with like I said, Otani and Trout, and they had such a good start, and it looked great, but now they got swept by the Jays at home. They got crushed by the Yankees last night, 9-1. It they need to start finding wins again soon because this is normally the part of the season where you're just like, okay, the Angels are done. Like by the start of July, we'll just write them off and we'll forget about them. It'll be Astros and the Mariners will have a late run for a playoff spot because they always seem to do that and come up short. But yeah, I mean, if you got Trout, like Otani's gonna be due up eventually, and LA's got some great sunshine, but you can get some other sunshine in other
Yeah.
locations. He can go, Los Angeles can just spend as much money as they want, or the Yankees would love to have Otani as well because they love to do that. They did it with Tanaka or whatever for Masahiro Tanaka forever. So there's some pressure just on them to be competitive to keep him in Anaheim.
It's a good point too. Or you can just drive across the city to Dodger Stadium because
Yeah.
that's feels like they get everybody in that team. Holy, like I just checked the standings yesterday. I looked at their run differential. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's like plus like 120. Like that's insane for at this point of the season. So they're a wagon.
No, they're incredible. I mean, I don't know what other teams are going to do to beat
Yeah.
them, what they're going to have to do to beat them, but it's going to take a Herculean effort for sure. Anything other in the sports world that you want to get off your chest before I let you go?
Oh, nothing I can think of off the top of my head. I'm trying to think. I
Any
don't know.
big Columbus hot takes you got before the off season? Anything you want to see them do?
Not really. Just looking forward to the draft. That's all we got to look forward to. Hoping they can get a couple good players. Actually,
Saw
they
they
had a
re-signed
great.
Korpisalo, didn't they?
Yeah, they signed Big Corpy and coming off his like 880 save percentage all year and hip surgery. So that should be a good year of him as a backup goalie. But they looked Sillinger and Johnson looked good at the World Championship. So at least it's encouraging. I like Cole Sillinger. I think he'll be a good player for a long time. And obviously did you watch that game? The phantom high stick that
Yeah,
Sillinger
that
had
was
was
the refs were
terrible.
out to lunch that day too.
Yeah, that was awful, but it seems to be a common theme in the hockey world right now, which is unfortunate that we always have to talk about that, but it's how it goes. But yeah, 6-12 in the draft. So thank you, Chicago. I was kind of hoping for like next year's pick that Chicago won the lottery this year and we get one of those, was it 3 studs that are supposed to be in the
Yeah,
draft next
Bedard
year?
and Michkov both look some good.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have hated that next year, but that's all right. We'll live with the 6 this year and go from there. I don't expect Columbus to contend for a couple years, unfortunately. Sad.
Well, we'll get you through it here, but I always appreciate you making the time. Always good to chat with you, Benny, and we'll do it again soon.
Unreal. Thanks, Jug. Have a good one.
You too, buddy. There's Ben Murray. Always great to talk to Benny. Always got some great takes and well versed in the sports world. But we got Game 1 Rangers Tampa Bay tonight. We got some baseball. We got some tennis ongoing. I didn't get to talk about Nadal Djokovic today, but what a match that was yesterday. If you can find that online. I would recommend it because you might not be able to see it again, even if you're not a tennis fan. Look it up. We got the Memorial starting tomorrow at Muirfield Village in Ohio. I haven't heard if Dustin Johnson's competing there yet, but that's obviously that's top of mind. And we'll get into that tomorrow. We'll talk about the Memorial this weekend. We'll talk about a bunch of different stuff tomorrow here on To The Point. But enjoy the rest of your nights. Enjoy Game 1, and we'll see you tomorrow.